The Wednesday, August 21st, 2024 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Transportation Commission. This meeting is being held electronically, but we intend to conduct it similarly to an in-person meeting. Public comment will be via telephone or Zoom only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 934-6385-2907 or join via the Zoom link. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the public notices section of the city website, and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16. Chris, if you wouldn't mind doing roll call, please.
Yeah, not a problem. I'll now call roll. I have received a request from Commissioner Ramaswamy that she will not be able to attend. Please say here and when from where you're dialing when your name is called. Commissioner Briggs. Okay. Commissioner Broven.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Campbell. Okay. Commissioner Automaki.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Hook.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Keeler.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Lee.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Carpenter. I'm not seeing him. Okay. Commissioner Hutchinson. Commissioner Leo.
Here from Northville Township.
Commissioner Margolis. Commissioner Lieutenant Mike Sherpa.
Here from Tyrone Township.
And Commissioner Stupka. Okay. It unfortunately doesn't appear like we have quorum.
Yep. So similar to last month, we will start going through our agenda items. If there is anything that requires a vote, then we will delay or move it to the next meeting. But also, if we get another voting member that joins us anytime while the meeting is occurring, then we can maybe go back or be able to vote on some things. But I do intend to still go through the agenda items. So let's do that. The first topic is the approval of the consent agenda. So that is something we will not be able to do since we don't have quorum. Okay, Nick's there. So yeah, we don't have quorum, so we won't be able to approve the consent agenda or approval of the minutes from May and July. So it's something that we'll have to put off until the September meeting. But we can do public comment. So this is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Again, please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 934-6385-2907 or connect via Zoom as described on the agenda. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number or person's Zoom ID. In order to allow you to raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone or select the raise hand button in Zoom. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we can hear you clearly. Chris, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak who have raised their hand?
Yes, I'm seeing 2 people. We'll start with Kathy Griswold. You have 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 30-second warning. Hello, Kathy. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I have 3 quick items. The first one is, have I missed the 2023 crash report? I was expecting it to be on the agenda tonight. Number 2, I'd like to call everyone's attention to the fact that we had another pedestrian death over the weekend. And while there are a number of explanations for why it happened per Vision Zero, we need to look at all the contributing factors for that, and there are a number of them. And thirdly, good news at the state level, there is a Michigan rep who will be having 2 graduate students looking at pedestrian safety at the state level, looking at the Michigan Vehicle Code as well as the Michigan Uniform Traffic Code. And so I will provide an update later in the fall, and possibly they can give a presentation with their findings later in the fall. This is a class project. So thank you.
Thank you. I hope you call back in September when we anticipate having the annual crash report as a topic.
Good.
Any other members, Chris?
Yes, I see a number ending in 326. Once again, I'll allow you to speak and give you a 30-second heads up when your time is up.
Hello, this is Jeff Crockett. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we
Yep.
can.
I did send an email several days ago that I don't see on the agenda, and I hope that will be included. I can also follow up later on. I've been an Ann Arbor resident for over 50 years, and I have lived in the old Fourth Ward area for over 40 years, and love that I can walk to university events, restaurants, Zingerman's, the People's Food Co-op, and many shops. It is one of the few 15-minute neighborhoods in Ann Arbor, and I also regularly walk my dog. However, with increased bike and scooter activity in the last few years, inconsiderate scooter operators and bikers have on a number of occasions zoomed by me and my dog without warning. Offenders leave the scene too quickly to take a picture to identify them. I can't report the offender without identification. As a result, enforcement is almost non-existent, but I'm not the only pedestrian who feels this way. Concerned, I started a next-door conversation that resulted in 230 comments over a period of several weeks starting in July the 22nd. Several days ago, I followed with another next-door post that resulted in 66 comments in just 24 hours. Clearly, there is significant community concern about public safety that involves the interactions among drivers, bikers, scooter operators, and pedestrians. I learned that each of these stakeholder groups have different perspectives and need to be heard and respected. To learn about existing laws, I went to the police department and asked about the city ordinances that covers the operation of bicycles and scooters. The police officer on duty did not know. That was a surprise. Later, I learned that Article 12 of the City Code, recently revised on July the 24th, does address the operation of bikes and scooters. Unfortunately, few people know about Article 12. Even as bike and scooter traffic has increased in the downtown, there's been no public outreach or promotion of Article 12 that I am aware of in the press or on social media. Unfortunately, there is another very serious problem that emerged from the next door discussions, and that is right of way among drivers, cyclists, and scooter operators. The bike lanes, while helpful to bikers, has caused confusion among drivers. For example, at the intersection of Williams and 4th, there are 2 bikeway lanes on the north side of the street. A right turn going north crosses these bike lanes. At times, especially during periods of traffic congestion, bikers can speed in bike lanes much faster than the traffic. Distracted by traffic, drivers may not see a speeding biker in time. Please consider the following 5 suggestions to improve public safety.
30 seconds.
Number 1, hold public engagement, forums, and online surveys to determine what the public is experiencing. Develop and publish right-of-way guidelines for drivers, cyclists, and scooter operators. Engage the police department in suggestions 1 and 2 in developing an enforcement plan. Engage the University of Michigan in educating students on using bikes and scooters on city streets and sidewalks, and enlist the help of the $1 million Safe Street consultant. I will follow this up with an email. Thanks for your consideration. Jeff Crockett.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else, Chris?
I'm not seeing anyone else.
All right. All right, seeing no other members of the public who wish to speak, we can move on in the agenda. Next up is the Transportation Commission bylaws amendment. Again, this is something that we'll have to delay until next month. This is just an annual review of our commission's bylaws. If there's any interest in making any modifications, this has come up a couple of times in the last 2 months, I believe. I haven't heard of any interest in people amending the bylaws in any way. But of course, if you do have any ideas for things you'd like to see changed, please email us before the next meeting so we can discuss and vote on them there. All right. Next on the agenda is the Pauline Boulevard parking removal topic. So the water main project along Pauline Boulevard includes resurfacing and the addition of all ages and abilities bicycle facility. Part of this proposal includes removal of parking on one side of Pauline between 7th and Main Streets, which would require council action. So Nicholas Bailey will walk us through the proposed design and seek our recommendation. So Nicholas.
Well, thank you. Yes, so I'm going to pull up the pavement marking plan, which I hope also is in your package. So the plan that we have here, this is a plan that we prepared for what's called a GI submittal, which is part of the federal system for obtaining Act 51 money, which is one of the funding sources of the project. And so that project, these plans were submitted last week as part of that, and then we are considering them as 80% plans. So we get we have a feel relatively what we're trying to do, but it's not final. So to start us off, this is the pavement marking plans. We're at 7th and Pauline, so we're going to be going eastward. We are maintaining that left-hand turn lane that's out there now, and we will have a dedicated bike lane on both the north and south side. As we get closer to Hutchinson, this is going to be a raised intersection, similar to what we've recently done at Granger, where the ramps come up. Well, I guess it's a little bit different than one in Granger in that the pedestrian area is going to be raised. And so that's what we're going to do at Hutchinson, and we will have bike lanes on both sides. This will, when we go further east, we'll introduce the 3-foot clear separation, protecting the bike lanes. And we'll also have parking starting on the south side at the park. That cross section will remain, but one thing I should point out is on the north side, we will be having city posts, the black ones, following through the project, starting from Hutchinson, going all the way down the side. Main Street. So we'll have parking, we'll have the bike lane, we'll have the offset, 2 10-foot lanes, another clear offset, and another bike lane. When we come up to 5th Avenue, we're going to remove the parking by extending the Almendinger driveway approach. And we'll have a bump out at 5th. That'll be a little bit on the east side, it'll be narrower, it'll be reduced from what we have now. I guess it'd be wider than we currently have. You kind of see that in the gray lines in the background. That's what we currently have, whereas this line here represents what we will have or intend to have through the narrowing and the bump out. Then we continue along. This one will also be raised. I suppose we go back a little bit. This pedestrian crossing will be raised, as well as the one on 5th. Here we carry along. We'll have parking along the south side, no parking on the north side, and offsets. Bike lane. Next page here. That should bring us up to Edgewood. Here at Edgewood, we're going to have, again, we're going to drop the parking area. We're going to narrow up the total cross section of the road between the 2 curb lines with the bump out. It's going to help define all the different uses, minimize the pedestrian crossing distance. We will maintain the bike lane and the 3-foot strip through that side. This residential driveway will be extended through the bump out. And then when we get past that, then we're going to go back to a parking, bike lane, offset with two 10-foot lanes, offset and bike lane. That will bring us to the next one, continuing on an eastward direction. We're going to introduce a mid-block pedestrian crossing. This provides two different benefits. Now that we only have parking on the one side, on the south side, we know that there's going to be more people who will need to cross the street. This gives them that ability. It will also be a raised pedestrian crossing, so also work as a traffic calming method in that as vehicles approach, it's going to be raised so that one to slow down. That's what that. Pretty much the same through here. And then on the last sheet, we have a speed table or speed hump about halfway between the mid-block crossing and the intersection at Main. And it will look like this. Continue the parking through, and then we will drop the parking, continue the bike lane. That'll allow for a dedicated right turn lane, and this will be a through and left turn lane, and then we'll have the existing configuration on the other side with a dedicated bike lane. So that's what we had. If you guys have any questions that I can answer through the slide or the 2-3 drawings.
Well, first, as an aside, I'd like to register the attendance of Commissioner Council Member Erica Briggs. Hello, good evening, and thanks for joining. So I think that gets us up to a full quorum now, right, Christopher?
Sorry to be late.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Yes, we're officially in quorum.
All right, excellent. Good. So I think I'll just to let everyone know, I think after this topic, I'll make a motion to go back and approve minutes and things like that. Okay, all right. So thank you very much, Nicholas. So let's open it up for questions and comments then before we talk about voting on this. So questions, comments. Just raise your hand or just pipe in if you like. Peter.
So I really like the crosswalks and the speed tables. I think that's a good addition. I do have some concerns though about the bike lane that's going to be in the door zone. And I guess I'd like to encourage us to find a way to have the bike lane, on the other side of the parking, so that it's protected by the parked cars. What's stopping us? I feel like other municipalities are able to achieve that. Other cities, why aren't we able to have that here in Ann Arbor?
That's a bigger topic, but I can say that we did engage the public through 2 different meetings on site at Elmendinger with some of the local residents that were sent out postcards. And we also had an online survey, and we asked the residents which they preferred. And so we got a resounding request to keep the parking on the curb face parking. And it also similarly matches what we have between 7th and Stadium on the 2018 project in Pauline. So there was a desire to keep with the similarity in this particular corridor. But I would defer to others on a larger topic.
Yeah, maybe Luke, you can give some detail, but I believe on Division between Hoover and Packard, initially we had the floating parking, right? So there was curb, bike lane, then parking, and we had that maybe on the order of a year or 2, but the cars were not managing to park in a way that wouldn't block the bike lane. It seemed like there was confusion, and it just didn't seem to work out. So, as I understand it, on Division, they flipped it to be a design like this. So I don't know if you've heard any feedback. This is also the same design as what's on Granger between State and Packard right now, as far as the layout of parking then bike lane. So Luke, have you heard any feedback about what's currently there on Granger or how the switch occurred on Division?
I guess just for division between Packard and Madison. Yeah, or Hill Street to Packard. That segment experienced a couple issues, like garbage can placement, and also I guess being new as to how floating parking area is being used by cars, and also I guess any large vehicle, including fire trucks, making turning movement. But that's more specific to division at one of the minor side street. So
Any other follow-ups, Peter?
Yeah, I guess I would just like to say that what are other municipalities doing? I'm not understanding why we can't achieve what other cities are doing with parking protected bike lanes. I don't think we have anything particularly bad here. I don't think we have drivers that are worse. I don't think that's why. The other thing I'd like to address is the idea that that we would do a survey to figure out which is the correct configuration of lanes to have. And I want neighbors and residents in this area to have input into this project. But when it comes to the configuration of the lanes, which I see as a critical component of making this area safe for users, I want the opinion of experts on traffic engineering and transportation engineering to be making decisions about where these lanes should be. This is not a thing that we should be designing by survey. We should be choosing the one that's safest and then doing it. And so the idea that we're going to survey residents to see what they think is safest just doesn't make sense to me. And I would like to register my discomfort with that way of designing our streets.
Thank you. Could I ask for a little clarification, Nicholas? Did you say that this section of Pauline with this configuration would then match the section of Pauline west of this?
That's
right?
correct. Yes,
Okay.
with the curbside parking, and specifically from 7th to Redeemer, there's a section that's specifically this side. The parking's on the north side in that particular location, but it is the same configuration where we have curbside parking with the bike lane and then a buffer and then the vehicular lane. I might say that although we did survey the residents for their opinion, we use that as one of our guiding instruments in the design. Cyrus, our part of the transportation design, weighed that opinion with many others to come up with the final design.
Real quick, Peter, if I could follow up with you, was your concern more about being doored by parked cars or just proximity to the lane of vehicle travel?
Both,
Okay.
but especially people riding in the door zone just feels like a bad idea to me. We can do something different, and I'd like to do it.
Okay. Yeah, because my thought is that if no matter which side of the parked cars the lane is on, I think presents a risk of being doored. I mean, there's probably more people getting in and out of the car on the driver's side. You're right.
Yeah, but the door zone could be the buffered, the hash marked area. So from the center line of the road, it would go center line, car lane, parking lane, hash mark, bike lane. And so, yeah. So I think that we can get further away from both the vehicles traveling through there and the doors. Also, I hate to say it, but we have a lot of single occupancy vehicles, so your door doesn't get used as often.
Yeah.
The other thing is that with this design, cars have to drive through the bike lane to get to the parking. There's no other way to get to the parking. They have to go through the bike lane. So if we can leave all the cars in one place and all the bikes on the other side, then let's do it.
Erica?
Yeah, thanks. I guess, for purpose of clarity, I'm assuming that the city doesn't survey on designs that engineering staff doesn't think are safe. Is that an appropriate assumption?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So I can understand that there's desire to see, different treatments that are used in different places. I'm personally not particularly, I think this is a good design for this space. I have more concerns around winter snow maintenance, and making sure that this is an accessible lane of travel the vast majority of the year, and given the kind of the use of these vehicles, I don't think it's right in the door zone downtown. Feels a bit more challenging to me than in this corridor, where there's not quite the frequency of vehicles going in and out and things like that. So I'm supportive of the design that's come forward, and I agree that we don't want to be making safety decisions based on survey input. But it doesn't sound like that was really what was done in this case. So excited to see this moving forward, hopefully.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think I've said before, but like, I will not ride in a bike lane that is in the door zone. My fiance nearly got killed by being doored when he was in college. So this is like, yeah, I agree with Pete. I think we should be avoiding this at all costs.
All right. Nicholas, can you maybe walk us through where we are on the timeline? I know the vote today is just about removing parking on the north side of the street, and that's what we're referring to council. But
Right.
as far as design and the configuration of the bike lane versus parking lane here that we're talking about, where are we in the timeline for this project?
So we're going to have a meeting with the Transportation Commission. No, sorry, the TSC, which is the MDOT branch that administers the letting process. That'll be coming up in a month, and then from there we will have time to revise the plans. And we are looking to have the final plan submitted in November in order to get into the queue for a January bid opening, and then we'll start construction in March.
If there was I guess I do have a question. If the configuration were flipped where it's parking and then the bike lane closest to the curb with a buffer in between, sorry, how would snow removal work in that case if there are cars parked in the middle? Is that something that would require special equipment to access the bike lane that's between parked cars and the curb?
I could go ahead and speak to that. So
Thanks, Paul.
yeah. So I think one of the issues that was brought up here was the section of division. And so depending on the size of the bike lane, one of the biggest issues that we had on division was that people couldn't park. So they couldn't figure out where to stop the car and where to put their car. And so frequently what would happen is they were in the bike lane just enough that we couldn't get any snow removal vehicles in there. And so we have purchased some very small stuff smallest is about 48 inches. So if Nicholas were to redesign this, we have to really look at the whole design to make sure we can put a small piece of equipment in there to remove the snow first. And then we also have to look at cart placement for our solid waste cans. And that's one of the biggest issues with these bike configurations are that depending on what size the bike lane buffer is, we try to make sure we're never reaching across an area to grab a cart or ever across a bike lane to get a cart so that we don't hurt somebody. And then, in a lot of these where they have no buffer out at the edge, our residents don't have anywhere to put 3 carts because everybody's got compost, recycle, and trash. So we would have to look at this whole design again just to see, how much space is on Pauline in particular. I don't know what a reconfigured design would look like, but the biggest challenge is just making sure we have enough room to get a snow vehicle in there. And then, once it starts snowing and people can't see the lines anymore, then they're guessing, they're looking at the next car up and trying to figure out kind of where do I go? So, those are some of the issues we had on Division, aside from the fact that Division was only one way. So people really couldn't figure it out. And then we couldn't get a truck through the middle of 2 cars on either side. So this wouldn't be as bad on Pauline, but it could be. I just don't know how big of a bike lane we'll end up with, and then if we'll have somewhere for residents to put their carts when they're out there. So,
Thank you, Erica.
In terms of a change in design, how would that impact the timeline that you discussed earlier, and also impact on other projects moving forward?
It could definitely have an impact, but we just have to, exactly, it will steal time from the design group on other projects. But we would still manage to ensure that we make the submittals that we need to secure the federal finance funding that's involved. So we would make it happen for this job. But of course, it will have some impact on the design load for other projects.
And what is the width of the bike lane and the buffer? I'm not sure if it varies throughout this segment of road, but
it does vary a little bit, but generally it's 5 feet from the face of curb on the north side with a 3-foot buffer. And on the other side, it's a 3-foot buffer with a 4-foot bike lane and a 7-foot parking lane.
So that's 7 feet between parking lane and vehicle travel lane. I'm thinking about 7 feet. I feel like that's pretty generous. I mean, again, the design isn't what's up for a vote today, the specifics of the design, but 7 feet makes me feel a lot better about the risk of getting doored than, a 3 or 4 foot width bike lane with no buffer does. So, okay. And Erica? Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? I'm sure the design team will take back all of the comments here tonight, but the vote that we're going to have here will be about removing the parking on one side of the street. So any other comments before we take the vote about the parking removal? Peter.
I don't know how to register my disapproval other than with a no vote. And I don't want to vote against removing parking and putting in bike lanes, but that's kind of what I feel like I'm going to do. I mean, do you guys want to come back with a different design that doesn't have people in the door zone? Then we'll vote on it then.
Well, Nick Hutchinson's here. I'll let him make that decision.
Again, either design is going to require the removal for parking, and as Brett mentioned, this is just to do the removal of parking so that we can do either one of those things. We'll take the feedback, we'll look at it, and we'll consider what to do. But this isn't a vote on the design, so I'm not sure what else to say there. But
Megan?
Yeah, I'll just say like I'm comfortable voting for the removal of parking, but yeah, I would like to see, yeah, I trust that you guys will take the feedback. I would love to see fewer bike lanes in the door zone. That's kind of that's my take.
Can we have this on our agenda for next month? See what does it how the design has changed? Is that too soon, Nick?
Yeah, we can do that.
Erica?
Well, I feel like there's been mixed feedback around the screen, so I don't know. I mean, I'm comfortable with the design as it is. I think staff needs, I think, I don't know how everybody, around the screen is feeling about this. I understand there's mixed feelings here, but I'm not sure that staff has clear direction on where the majority of transportation commissioners stand on this.
One move.
Yeah, I'm okay with the design. I've been to Almendinger quite a lot, especially when I was and just thinking about how people use the basketball court, the kind of things that people are doing kind of on that south side. I'm okay personally with the design as it is and would be in support. So just wanted to make my position clear.
Any other comments? And yeah, Christopher, we can write this down to bring it back as an agenda topic if we we'll have to talk about timing of the project and what the topic would, if it would just be, discussion or something to vote on or whatever. We can talk about that.
Yeah, not a problem. I'll put it up for that'll be the September Transportation Commission agenda.
Sure. One move.
Oh, hey, so Brett, like procedurally speaking, so are we making a motion to postpone this for a month? And then should we vote on it, or are you just unilaterally kicking this back?
No, I think, like Nick said, regardless of the configuration of the bike and parking lanes, removal of the parking on the north side will have to happen. So I think it's valid for us to vote on that tonight.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the clarification.
That's my opinion. If you guys disagree, let me know, or if you want to abstain or what have you. But I think regardless of the bike lane configuration, the parking removal still stands. So.
Yep, understood. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, so is there then a motion to recommend approval of the removal of parking on one side of the street on Pauline Boulevard between 7th and Main? All right, moved by Erica, seconded by One Move. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no or raise your hand. All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Next up, information and discussion topic, winter maintenance, 23 to 24 calendar year review and potential winter maintenance program changes.
Yeah, Brett, at this time, I would advise now that we have quorum to go back and go ahead and approve the agenda meeting minutes. And
thank you. Motion to amend the agenda to go back to approve the consent agenda. Moved by Wanwu, seconded by Megan. All those in favor of amending the agenda to go back and vote on the consent agenda and minute approval, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
All those opposed say no or raise your hand. That passes. So let's go back to approval of the consent agenda. Thanks for reminding me. There are two items on the consent agenda, approval of the agenda and approval of the minutes from May and July, 2 months that we had there. Are there any other modifications to the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Seconded by Megan. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
All those opposed say no or raise your hand. The consent agenda and minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Let's do then also going in order, the Transportation Commission bylaws amendment. Again, our bylaws call for an annual review to see if changes are desired. This will be an open discussion to see if anyone has any changes in mind. Luke, anything you need to say or any comments?
Not at this moment. Like last meeting, we went through the introduction of this topic, and so far staff has not received any notice of changes.
All right. In real time, any desired changes to bylaws? Seeing as there do not seem to be any interest among commission members to make changes to the bylaws at this time, can I have a motion indicating that no changes to the bylaws are suggested and this matter can be closed? Moved by Wanwu, seconded by Megan. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no or raise your hand. Motion passes. All right, we already did Pauline Boulevard parking removal. So next up is winter maintenance, 2023 to 24 review and potential winter maintenance program changes with Paul Matthews. The Transportation Commission has requested a review of winter maintenance activities associated with the previous winter. Paul Matthews will give a review of winter maintenance last year and talk about winter maintenance program changes. Paul, floor is yours.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
No.
Not yet.
Still nothing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You can.
No, I still
No, we still can't see it. Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. I have no idea why it's not showing. Maybe it's here.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
All good.
Got it.
Well, let's play the slideshow. Okay, great. So so I'm here to talk about our snow removal processes in the city of Ann Arbor. And so I thought I would start at the beginning to kind of just go through how things are done and how we maintain the city during a snow event. So public works, we are streets maintenance, water distribution, stormwater, sanitary collection, urban forestry, and our solid waste collections. And I say that because all 6 of those items need maintenance every single day, no matter what. And usually things go wrong with those systems at the exact same time that we have competing interests with our snow events. Street maintenance itself, it's a maintenance crew of 17 employees, and our budget is just over $6 million. That 17 employees also includes 1 supervisor. So we have 16 frontline employees that maintain all of our street system. We have 100 center line miles of major roads, and that's just kind of how we describe what our transportation system is, no matter how many lanes are present in that width. And then we have 200 center line miles of local roads. We maintain 13.2 miles as of last winter of our buffered or protected bike lanes, 90.2 miles of our on-street bike lanes. We maintain all the vegetation along city rights of way that are not parks or frontages or sides of homes. And then we have 13 miles of gravel roads mixed in with our center line miles, which could take a completely different set of winter treatment, summer treatment, and they're more maintenance intensive. And then we provide bridge maintenance, which is typically just, cleaning them and making sure the joints are good and clean, and things of that nature. So in Ann Arbor, our snow removal is kind of divided by a lot of different departments. We have our public roads, we have our bike lane system. Those two components are maintained and operated by Public Works. So those are our two main functions. And then our sidewalks are a mixture of DDA area, but some of those are private property maintained. Some of them are the State Street Association, and then some of those are the Main Street Association. So a little mix in the DDA. And then obviously our private property owners maintain their sidewalks. And then our Parks Department maintains all of their own sidewalks. They also maintain public right-of-way sidewalks, which are about 13.5 miles that are not a frontage of a property or a parks facility. So sidewalks are kind of a mix. And then Ann Arbor, our average winter, we expect we're going to have about 53 days with snow coming down on the ground or on the ground. And then we know we're going to have about 58 inches of snow. I know last winter was one of our most mild. We had 31 inches of snow, and 22 inches of that came in January, along with a whole bunch of rain and then a polar vortex mixed in there. So we had kind of an interesting January, but for the most part, last winter was pretty quiet. In our winter maintenance goal, what we tell the community is that we're going to maintain your roadway system so that they're safe to use at reasonable speeds. And that is kind of a different definition depending on what kind of a road type you're on. If we're talking a major road, we're always looking to get those down to bare pavement. Now, they won't always be bare pavement, but our goal is bare pavement. And once those are in bare pavement, then we go into our local roads, which most people would say a reasonable speed is a lot lower. And, you know, we think we're just using local roads, not as a cut through, not as a travel area. We're going home on those local roads. So our maintenance goal is to make sure that they're safe for reasonable speeds, depending on the road type. Our winter road maintenance, so all of these different colors on here are roads that we maintain all the way down to bare pavement, no matter how much snow we get. And we would always maintain these to bare pavement prior to going into our local roads to do any kind of maintenance. We have 8 snow routes, so a normal little Michigan snow that just makes everything slippery will probably only have 8 trucks on the road at one time. We're treating 346 lane miles every single time it snows down to bare pavement, which is, go to Chicago and come back. That's how much pavement we're treating to bare pavement. And this is primarily our major roads, major thoroughfares. And that's because they have the most pedestrian traffic. Many have bike lanes, higher speeds, just require more maintenance. And we also have school routes mixed in there. And those are locations we do pretty much a loop to get the most people from the major roads or connector streets within a neighborhood into a school. And we make it safe in the areas where those schools are. So then from there, we have our local roads. We have 23 routes that we plow, and we have over 500 lane miles to clear once that happens. And so usually we start to get some staff into local roads right when it starts or stops snowing, but you got to remember we still have 8 routes, 346 miles that we get down to bare pavement before those other assets move into neighborhoods. And usually in a large snow event, those 8 routes would usually have 16 to 20 drivers just working on the main routes before we can even put staff into our local roads. And so earlier I said we have 16 employees in the street, so we've already maxed out and we're already borrowing employees from other work areas. And we put our staff on a 24-hour operation the minute we get a larger event. And typically our staff will work anywhere from 48 to 72 hours when we have a larger snow event of 3 inches or more, just to get everything to bare pavement on majors and local roads so that everything's been plowed curb to curb once. In our local roads, we say that once it stops snowing, we will have plowed through your neighborhood in a 24-hour period. So you're not going to see bare pavement, but we will have made sure that we've plowed streets open within that first 24 hours after the last flake falls. And then from there, we are continuously touching them up, going through, salting our hills, intersections, and curbs, excuse me. And so that will continue to happen after a main event. So, and then any normal snow, just a small snow, we do run through all of our locations in neighborhoods and we salt intersections, hills, and curves. So then we also have our bike lane maintenance, which the 13.2 miles of buffered protected bike lanes that we have already. We currently deploy one of our streets drivers, and that takes them approximately 12 hours. And we have a 3 to 4 hour snowfall to clean those up completely and get them salted down to bare pavement. We have the 90.2 miles of our on-street bike lanes that we treat with our plowing operations, and those we typically have to go back, plow them back open, and kind of once no contractors are done working on the sides of roads, we have a lot of additional work to do on those because the way our salting equipment is set up, it's set up for road maintenance. We have, fortunately, council approved some new equipment for us last year and again to this year, which will give us updated snow plowing equipment that puts us really to where we should be today. We'll have some larger plows, some wing plows, the ability to plow wider. Our newer salt spreading equipment will have the ability to put salt and brine right up against the curb where a biker drives, which currently we do not have that ability because our equipment is set up just for roads and it's set up to put it on the left-hand side of a truck. And so it's very hard for us to clear that curb lane on those unprotected bike lanes with our current setup. So it takes a lot more effort for us to clear that right edge on these unprotected lanes than we currently do, just because you don't have traffic driving over it, spreading the salt and warming the pavement back up. We then have a mixture of sidewalks, paths, and refuge islands. So all of these lines, it's kind of hard to see on this computer, but everywhere you see a color, that's somewhere that a parks employee maintains a sidewalk, a pedestrian area, or one of what we call a refuge island, which are our small islands that are out in the middle of a street. So those require special equipment or many times just a hand route service by one of our employees to go and take care of those. So 14 miles of those sidewalks and paths are funded by the right-of-way, so they don't actually belong in a park, but the park staff maintains those 14 miles. And then there are 66 pedestrian islands as of last year. I know we're currently building some and new roundabouts. So every time we build one of those, we usually have any roundabout is 4 new spots where someone has to go out and work by hand. Any pedestrian island is the same thing. One person has to go clean that out by hand, or any of the bump outs. So all the pedestrian features that we put in do currently come with the cost, and they have, they take extra time for an employee to maintain and work on. We have a right-of-way sidewalks. So residential property owners, they're responsible for property in front and on the side. With that, they have to clean any bus stop, any handicap ramp, and their mailboxes. And they have to do that within 24 hours of the end of a snowfall. Our non-residential property owners are responsible for clearing all the snow that's accumulated prior to 6 a.m. off of their sidewalk and adjacent to their properties before noon on that same day. The city provides free salt and sand mixture to its residents. We also have a newer setup called the A2 Snow Match program, where it looks to connect volunteers with residents that are unable to clear their snow. And so that's a newer program that the city put into place. And then all of this is enforced by our community standards department, which is our police department. So some of the things that we do in order to treat roads and things prior to an event, we have the ability to put down brine prior to an event, but our current equipment that we own now is very small. So we only do select areas, but what that does is that allows us to pre-treat an area so that we don't get bonding. So then when we do go back to work on a storm, hopefully that snow is not stuck to the pavement when we get there. And, a lot of that depends on how cold the snow comes in. When it comes in cold, it's great because brine works like it's supposed to, but when it comes in wet and it starts as rain, it can wash everything away. So you're not treating at those times. which is, we've seen the last couple of years, we've had a lot of wet storms come in, which is why we had a lot of the tree damage. I know this year we're predicted to be cold and snowy, so we don't maybe necessarily expect some of that cold. So we will expect to start, pre-treating. We're always watching the weather as it comes in. We have traffic cameras that are out. They're monitoring pavement, looking to harness AI so it knows when snow is falling and sees weather patterns coming in to alert people prior to, kind of take some of the guesswork out of the equation. We also utilize specialized weather services with cameras in 2 different places that predict when we'll have snow that hits the pavement based on the temperature, the dew point, and the weather patterns that are coming in. So we're always looking to be ahead, to be prepared, to make sure that we can do the best job possible on roads. Most of the time, we're out way ahead of an event. Anytime it's going to freezing rain, we're putting down granular out ahead. Prior to snow, same thing. We're arriving, an hour before we need to be here so that we can make sure our roads are safe and our most critical roadways have treatment when they need to have those. We also have a plow and spreader activity map that we put out to the public. This is getting revamped this year because we have a new AVL system. So the new one actually has a lot of functionality we don't have now. But we look to show people when we've been there, when we're going to be there, and where they are next. We plow our local roads around our solid waste collections. So if your solid waste collections tomorrow, we're not plowing you until last. We're starting in locations the next day's solid waste. And so we work our way back so that our solid waste people the next day are good, because we know you came home from work, put your solid waste container out already, even though it's snowing and we need to plow. So we skip your area so we do not knock all of your cans over. So that's kind of the way we do our local roads. And like I say, we're working on showing exactly when we've been through a route on our new system, and we'll show how many passes we made on that street. Those are some of the things that are coming your way. I think the challenges that we're faced with are that we have a limited staff. There are 16 people in our streets department working on the roads. It frequently, once we go into high needs and we have to plow, we're running about 24 to 26 employees per 12-hour shift, back to back to back. So a truck never shuts off except to get gas and take a break between shifts, and it will run for 48 to 72 hours once an event starts. We have, limited resources in our budgets. The same budget that resurfaces your roads also is what we utilize for our snow maintenance or any public works maintenance on any roadway. So we know we're challenged on our resources, and we work to spend those resources the best way possible. Our equipment currently is challenged. Like I say, we were fortunate enough to get a bunch of it upgraded, and I expect that we'll be able to clear greater areas, put salt and material where we want it. We'll be able to pre-treat all of our major road routes earlier in the a snow event with increased liquids, the ability to burn off ice pack when we get it in the future, because we'll be carrying liquids that we can't currently carry now. Our weather patterns have been really strange. Like I said, when a snowstorm comes in as rain, turns into wet snow, and you get about 8 inches of it, and then a polar vortex comes in behind it and gives you single digit weather, and it hard packs and binds in the neighborhoods. Like we had the one storm last year that took several days of plowing 24 hours a day and salting it to get it to come off of the roadway. Those are really difficult weather patterns. If it's a standard normal winter where we get a 30-degree day after, we can easily get snow off the roadway and treat intersections in neighborhoods even after it's been hard packed. So weather patterns have been a challenge. I think it's always a challenge to manage expectations depending on where you're from. If you're from a neighborhood that maybe was 1 block long in another community, and you paid and a plow service showed up with 6 people and 3 pickup trucks to clear everything curb to curb and throw down a whole bunch of salt, your expectation may be there when you move to Ann Arbor, but you cannot achieve that in a 29 square mile city. And really too, we do not manage our side streets in a way that puts down salt to burn snow off, because we know that salt is a pollutant, and every single time you put it down, it's not going away. It's going into a water system. So we try to manage people's expectations with what's the most appropriate for the environment and for our practices and the budget. And then cooperation is always going to be a challenge. And just, if people could move cars off the road, we wouldn't have to enact an ordinance and tow and ticket and some of those things, or just getting people to shovel their snow. So cooperation is definitely something we're working on, and working with our communications department to try to get those messages out early and often when we see a snow event coming on, and then just encouraging property owners to maintain their system. We have gone out to bid a couple of times since I've been here to look at what it would take to maintain every sidewalk in the community, and the numbers and estimates were pretty astronomical. I don't have them with me. I wasn't the main lead on those projects, but they were cost prohibitive. And so, in the memo that we gave you last year, we kind of looked at a few different things that we could do to try to improve some of the way we're managing snow events internally. And so we are working on 2 separate ITBs that should be out soon that would secure some outside resources that would assist with right-of-way snow removal. And really, those are locations that maybe Parks is maintaining now, but they have a very small workforce as well. And they have every single parking lot and city-owned facility, as well as their own paths to maintain. And it's harder and harder for them to augment their staff with outside, temporary labor in the winter just for those few events. And so we're looking at maybe a contract that would take and get a contractor to work on the right-of-way snow removal and the pedestrian island and places that require handwork, so that we could get those locations cleaned up earlier in a snow event instead of them having to drag until the end, which is where a lot of them end up, just based on the sheer number of miles of paths that are in how staff has to maintain. And then the administrator's office, they solicited vendors to provide additional snow removal from sidewalk ramps within the DDA earlier this year. And so that is one area. We have a meeting a little later this week to kind of go over that and look at how that should be administered, and if it should be rolled also into the same ITB that we're working on for right-of-way snow. And then the other budget item that we had was giving us additional monies to be used in residential neighborhoods. There are a couple other larger cities in Southeast Michigan, Livonia being one of them, that they will have an on-call contractor that they can call. So when it does stop snowing, they can bring in additional resources to work in their neighborhoods and start plowing those locations earlier for the larger events, which would get us ahead. Would get us ahead in events for sure. And so we do have $500,000 that was earmarked for that if we need to use that. And then we're also looking at the snow emergency parking ban. The one we currently have is an odd even setup, and it also has a blackout between 8 p.m. and midnight. And so we would have to try to manage plowing one side of the street, plowing the other side of the street, remembering when it was the blackout, and then going back through neighborhoods to try to work through that. And just knowing how snow emergencies work anyway, with trying to get the word out, trying to teach someone, and especially a transient population like we have with the students. And I think something like that would be really difficult to do and probably not very efficient, just in the fact that we'd have to go back multiple times. So we would have to look at a whole holistic emergency parking ban in the community, which would require changing the ordinance and then getting a lot of buy-in from different departments, from ticketing to towing to trying to just get the word out and making sure we get the word out to people so we're not ticketing and towing, because ultimately we just want to plow the street. and we know that's not good for our residents to kind of be a heavy hand. So that's not necessarily where we want to go with it. We're still talking about what a snow emergency parking ban could look like, where the blackout areas would have to be based on the fact that some people just don't have driveway space. We know our student sections don't have enough parking for their tenants typically, and there can be some equity issues just all around. So the snow emergency is something we're going to work on, but the two immediate things are to look at DDA areas specifically, and that outline is this red area. We have, within the DDA, Main Street Association and State Street Association contract out snow removal, but then there are some other areas within where it's the property owner. And so this would look at what it would cost to do that. They do have some numbers that came back. They're pretty high. We'll have to kind of look at it and discuss it. And then ultimately it will be council's decision as to whether we allocate fund balance or one of those from our Metro Fund to start a maintenance program to augment what's already happening out there. Those are what we're looking at as far as making changes. I hope that was helpful as far as explaining kind of how we're doing things and where our issues are, and I welcome feedback or any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Paul. Before we get into questions and comments, could you clarify what an ITB is?
I'm sorry, yes. An ITB is an invitation to bid. So it's where we put an invitation to bid out, we put our specifications out there, and we give kind of multiple options for bidders to bid on, and then they publicly submit a price for what they would perform the service for.
All right, thanks. Questions, comments, discussion? All right, I'll go first. The $500,000 that's in the budget for this fiscal year, right? And that's to explore outside contractors to help with road clearing. But so you haven't settled yet on exactly how you intend to spend that. Is that true?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll put an ITV out for that. We know what we'll do for that. We will contract. The specification will be to contract with a vendor and be able to call them at the beginning of an event and say, once it stops snowing, we want you to bring in this many pieces of equipment, depending on what their price is. They typically bring their own supervisor and mechanics in to maintain their own equipment, and then they will work on your street. So we don't know if we'll get a contractor to respond to it, but we will. That's our goal, is to put that out and shortly and see what that, if we get some contractors to submit pricing and be able to deliver that service for us.
Is there any consideration to solicit contractors to do ramp clearing?
Yeah, so that's the option that the administrator's office had looked at, and that was only within the DDA. We have not looked at a citywide ramp clearing solicitation.
You have a ballpark, approximation of how much, I know that it varies with number and severity of snow events, but, on a per ramp basis or anything like that?
I can say the small area that we had within the DDA, the pricing that was submitted was just over 27,000 per event, and then an additional 3,300 per inch. So if it was 4 inches, it was another 12,000. So we'd look at 40,000 per snow event to clear the ramps within the DDA. And that was an on-call contract. So it was meaning they're just taking risks. We're calling them when we want them to show up. So it's not an every time item, which I was told was somewhat problematic, but I wouldn't know. The solicitation that we will use on the refuge islands and some of the work that we would have done would be a contractor that was always on call, that would respond when we hit an inch or larger, which is what our current sidewalk standard is.
Okay, yeah, because from my perspective, I think you guys do a reasonably good job on the roads, and it looks like with additional equipment, and possible resources, the roads I think are in pretty good shape, pretty good hands. But as you clear the roads, a lot of the sidewalk ramps are impacted, and those, if a plow truck plows a big, snow, a bunch of snow onto a ramp after somebody's already shoveled it, usually the person doesn't go back there or physically can't, pick up these huge chunks of ice and slush. And so, in my opinion, that's the biggest room for improvement are ramps in general in the city. So that's where I'd like to see the most consideration. Yeah, I just think that's the most room for improvement and could make the most impact on, especially, vulnerable users. Peter.
Thanks for bringing up the ramps, Brett. I agree with you. I sent out some notes before this topic was first on the agenda and included some pictures I took from an exercise that I did at a ramp in my neighborhood. I don't have a ramp on my property, but I went to a large lump of snow that had been plowed up on a ramp near one of these, and I went ahead and dug it out, and that required a mattock. I had to break it up with a pickaxe like the vise and shovel it out. But what I found was that about 90% of that lump that was left there by the plow was in the street. And my neighbor had actually done a really good job of clearing the sidewalk ramp. He had cleared all of the sidewalk, essentially. I mean, maybe except for the gutter pan. And so my observation has been that we are not clearing the streets curb to curb. And I think we need an operational change there so that this snow is not in the street anymore. And then there's no question about what needs to be done with it. Like the snow that's on the sidewalk, to me, the ordinance is clear. It needs to be removed by the property owner. I think that in the city, we're not excellent at, as property owners, we're not excellent at clearing sidewalks, but we do pretty good. And as a resident, I know what to do when I see a stretch of sidewalk that has not been cleared either by someone who physically can't do it or by someone who is a shirker or absentee landlord or property owner and is not doing their fair share. I know what to do. I can open up a C-click fix ticket for it, but when there's a big lump left by the plow, I don't know what to do. I don't know if that's in the street. I don't know if it's there for the property owner to take care of. Like nobody knows until you actually shovel it up and see what's there. And I think that we need some help from the operations team to remove that ambiguity and open up these curb ramps because they are a challenge for able-bodied people like myself in my neighborhood. They're a challenge, and it is it is a real inhibitor, I think, for anyone who is not good at walking because they have a disability or because they have a stroller or because they're old. Which this is a thing that we really need to fix. This is something that I would really like to see improved. So. Please let us know what you need in order to improve it.
Thanks, Erica.
Thanks. And completely agree with what Pete just said. I think that's one of the bigger challenges that we have. My understanding is that that's one of the things that changing our snow emergency ordinance would help with, at least. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yes, the less obstacles there are out there, the easier it would be to definitely get curb to curb. But it's also, as Peter said, our staff could do a better job rounding corners and getting all the way to the curb, which it's difficult when you round a corner to make sure you're on the curb, not in the grass, There are a lot of other things that kind of come into play there. Not knowing where that curb is one of them because it's usually heavier snow. But yeah, getting closer to it and putting all the snow on the curb ramp or all the way to the curb edge would take away the ambiguity. You get there. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that should be a priority in terms of, both our ordinances. I know this is a controversial ordinance to put into place. I think that there is hopefully, increase the policy support for this. I agree. We need to, there's certainly going to have to be blackout areas in terms of there are certain areas probably in the downtown that there are just simply not. You guys would have to figure out where there's just really not a spot for people to put their cars. And there's a few neighborhoods like that. I don't know if you've considered, to the degree that we can move forward with an ordinance quickly. I'm happy to support that in any way I can on council. And if there's a desire to try to learn from, pilot an area for a winter instead of trying to do it, citywide, I will volunteer the 5th Ward and take the heat for it. So I know there will be angry phone calls, but it may take a little while for us to figure out how to educate effectively, and maybe it's easier to do that in a smaller area. But one question, I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly in terms of the potential maintenance, potential contract for clearing refuge islands, and then I think you said that was also going to be relieving park staff of having to do sort of the sidewalks through parks. Did I understand that correctly?
No, it would just be some of our outlying locations that are right of ways that are not currently parks, or if they make sense to lump in with something. But overall, it would improve parks response to parks facilities and parks paths and things.
Okay. I see. So by relieving that of their work, then they can get to their facilities quicker. And I think what I'd like to see is just that we recognize that the connected network for non-motorized users looks a little different than that for, vehicle, car drivers or trucks or whatnot. That if you're walking or biking, you may be cutting right through your neighborhood park, and so that connected. Having that being done on a relatively similar timeline is important. I mean, I think we can anticipate after really large storms that it might, people may leave their bikes at home for a day or two, but certainly I'm going to try to walk someplace before I try to drive someplace after a heavy storm. So, to me, that's where we need to prioritize making sure that we're doing, making it possible for folks to do that. In a way that's reasonable. And then I talked about this with the administrator as well, and I appreciate your comments around salt. I think that my understanding is that we're not going to apply we're not going to apply extra salt this year, that we're going to try some of the other operational changes. The different equipment, hopefully getting to, figuring out how we get curb to curb with the ordinance changes, the, extra contracting before we would, and go through, a season or two that way before we would consider kind of changing our salting practices. Is that how you understand it as well?
Yeah, that's our understanding. I mean, I think,
okay.
Yeah, last year we had one storm that was a real challenge just based on the temp that it came in. And normally a hard packs kind of goes away over a few day period when you get a normal winter with a normal warm up. I think, we've had some biking community members that maybe haven't been satisfied that the road isn't dry all the way to the bike lane network on the main thoroughfares. But ultimately, I don't know that we want to increase our salt use in neighborhoods unless we absolutely have to. So we're not intending, based on your feedback and others, to increase at this time.
And I'll come back to it. I know there's another question lingering, but it's now maybe.
Hey, Erica, if our meeting cadence might not support it, but if you do have any interest in seeking input or recommendation from this commission or council on a emergency snow kind of ordinance, contact us. We can put something on the agenda. If you have something written up, we can discuss it. We won't meet again until September, of course, so it might not support what you're looking for, but.
Perfect. And I did remember what the other question is. I would assume, I guess I don't know what to assume. In a case of a snow emergency, would we send, is there an opportunity to send out localized electronic alerts to folks via text or things like that? Is that an opportunity? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, we have distribution lists for quite a few different things. Typically, snow emergencies, where I came from on the east side, everybody has a snow emergency when it snows, kind of in Oakland County, and so you put your notices out on the news, on the paper, on your websites, any of your distribution lists. You get the word out. People are pretty well trained on that side of town because they've grown up with that and they're just kind of used to it. I think the biggest problem here is that we have not had a snow emergency, at least in anybody's recent memory. We have our population of students that a lot of times could leave a car, go home for 2 weeks during Christmas, and then come back. And that car might still be in the roadway, which is why we struggle to sweep and plow in those neighborhoods anyway. So I think our biggest our biggest hesitance on the whole thing is we need to figure out how to roll the ordinance out. And our residents that are not used to it, first of all, would take a significant amount of education, which we can do and try to reach as many people as possible. But I think our student population's another issue. And we do have blackout areas suggested. I just know that we went through an exercise years ago just trying to get no parking on one side of a road, I think on maybe 14 blocks in the entire city, which I know Molly probably still has some heartburn over that, just because it was hard, to make sure we did it. And then if somebody was parked there, you got to go back just for the one car slot, because people would call and say, you made me move my car and one person's there, come back and get this one person. So we did have a lot of issues with it. I think we'd have to be thoughtful on rolling the ordinance out and whether it makes sense and when it makes sense to do it. And that's the problem. Maybe timeliness needs to be considered when we kind of think about it. I don't think it's a bad idea to change the ordinance. I just think we definitely
operationally it's difficult.
Yeah.
The other piece, one of the reasons I was asking that is, the snowfall last winter was a good example. I think we may be getting more of those. Sorry, son just got home and now my dog is excited. But I anticipate we may be getting more of those sort of weird storms as we move forward. I don't know if there's an opportunity to alert in some way. It's particularly problematic for snow clearance on sidewalks when you get a storm like that is such heavy, wet snow that basically if you haven't gotten out there, before, within the first 6, when it's coming down, and then it freezes immediately afterwards, it's really challenging to remove, even for folks who are, really able-bodied. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to think about somehow trying to, encourage, alert people, like get out and, it's going to be a heavy snow, get out and shovel now. I mean, people sort of do that informally with each other sometimes, but if there's a way for us to formalize that more, I think that might be at least helpful when we can anticipate some of those really bad storms coming our way.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely look at those. We're always looking at ways to utilize AI and listservs and anything we can do with the new systems that we have in place to make notifying people anything that we do easier. So we are always investigating those things. So I'll definitely take that back.
And I might suggest maybe the city and university could cooperate on opening up parking structures, especially on the weekends, does an entire parking structure really need to be gold permit only on a Saturday night? Maybe for students who it's, anticipated would have the most trouble complying with a snow emergency. Maybe we can give them some opportunities and some places to put their vehicles. Peter.
Erica, that's a good point about how different weather patterns will do different things. And I've observed that sometimes snow is easier to clear and more difficult based on the weather, but I guess I don't know what are the right conditions to cause the difficult or easy clearing. And so if we have, Paul, if we have people in the city staff who are looking at that and predicting that for the snows, I would love to hear their, love to hear what their prediction is, and would be glad to follow it. The other thing I was going to ask about was, and maybe Lieutenant Sherbeck could help with this, I don't know, how long are we allowed to park on streets for? I thought that there was a limit to how long you could park on a street without moving your car. Am I wrong about that?
There sure is a limit. 48 hours comes to mind.
That's what I thought. I was seeing 48 hours too. So, I mean, if we have a problem where cars are being left for more than 48 hours or over holidays or whatever, like we need to do something about that. We don't need an ordinance change to take care of that now. Like we need to get cars that are overstaying their welcome in the street. So I don't know the right way to do that, but it just feels like we already have the tools in place to make that happen.
Any other comments or questions? All right, well, with that, I want to thank you, Paul, for coming to meet with us tonight. I really appreciate all the work that your group does, especially in these winter snow events. I know it's really hectic, and to be on call like that and have be such an unpredictable situation. I really appreciate what you do for the city. So thanks again for coming tonight. All right. So moving on then to staff report and updates. You received a staff report providing project updates with your agenda materials. Luke, if you would review the report, answer any questions.
Thank you, I will. So in the material, I'll go over a couple items. For the 2024 construction projects, sidewalk gap filling, there are 3 items updated in this month. The Glendale Circle and Fair Street, they're complete. And also the Stone School Road between Packard and Eisenhower, that's on the east side of Stone School, it's complete. And also Sunnywood and Gray Lake intersection is also complete. Another update to the State and Hill Improvement Project. The segment of Hill Street from 5th to State has been paved and is now open to traffic. The remaining portion of Hill Street to the east of State will be completed later this month or early in September. Thank you. For East Medical Center Drive Bridge project, so right now the construction is underway and the bridge is currently reduced to 1 lane each way. The construction is going to continue into 2025. Then moving on to talk about 7th Street and Greenview. The 7th Street portion is expected to be open to traffic before the end of this month. And the overall project is going to continue into November of this year. Huron River Drive culvert replacement. It's a storm culvert beneath Huron River Drive, west of Bird Road. So the construction is now complete. Next, moving on to the category that's projects currently in design or planning. For Nixon Road reconstruction, this one includes installation of boulevard segments in the roadway, several roundabouts, and the bicycle and the pedestrian improvements. Virtual office hours, there was one for today, and there's another one for tomorrow. The time for the virtual office hour for tomorrow is between 7 and 9 p.m. We have just discussed the Pauline water main and the resurfacing. Then moving on to Pittsfield Village improvements. This one includes a large area around Pittsfield Boulevard, Whitewood Street, and Pinecrest Avenue. The scope includes water main replacement, storm improvements, sanitary sewer improvements, and road resurfacing. There's a project information session planned for, well, it already happened earlier this month, and there will be additional sessions later this year and in early 2025. The design work is underway, and construction is scheduled to begin in 2025. Moving on to other updates and information. State trunk line jurisdiction transfer evaluation. There has been a resolution directing the city administrator to negotiate with MDOT about the transfer of ownership to the city, and that resolution was passed by council on August 8th, and staff is right now making internal preparations for the negotiation. The Detroit to Ann Arbor connected and autonomous vehicle corridor. The first segment of the pilot is along I-94 between Rosenville and Belleville. This first segment was launched in the July of this year. The next one is University of Michigan Smart Intersection Project. So for this one, in the past month, the field installation continued. So we're going to bring more updates as the product or the field installation is coming to completion. So, and that's expected to be a few months out from now. Then another update from the Office of Sustainability and Innovations. So a total of 13 dual port EV chargers are either in the works or will be installed. So there are 7 dual port EV chargers that are already active and available. They are located at Ann Arbor Senior Center, Huron Hills Golf Course, Leslie Park Golf Course, and Fuller Park. There are 6 more chargers to be installed in the coming month at Veterans Memorial Park. For streetlight implementation, so far of this year, DTE has reported the fixing of 772 streetlights. Street calming, this is neighborhood street calming, neighborhood traffic calming program. So up to this point, Bird from Newport to Huron River and Henry from Golden to Packard. These 2 projects were already approved by City Council by June of this year. And Arella between Stadium and Pauline is going to City Council in September. The next 3 projects, they have all completed the final polling, and they all received sufficient support from the neighbors in the final poll. These include Mershon from South Church to Delaware, Warden from Jackson to Dexter, and Traver from Barton to John A. Woods. The next item about mapping updates. So in the material, you see there's a planned update to the Tier 1, Tier 2 corridors and intersections. That's part of the transportation plan. This mapping update is designed to be a part of the transportation plan. There are some ongoing discoveries and collaboration between engineering and police department, and staff is currently working on the update. So we're actually revising a draft version that has been prepared. So This one will either be part of the crash report scheduled for next month commission meeting, or it will be, I guess, reported separate from that. Next item is Safe Street for All grant. For this one, the first bullet point says awaiting NEPA approval from Federal Highway for near miss and quick build projects. Earlier this month, we just received the NEPA approval for near miss evaluation, and we're still working with Federal Highway on the quick build portion of the project. On the contracting side, so far there are two consultants on the team, Sam Schwartz, which is working on the quick build and speed management portions, and AECOM, they're working on the near miss analytical portion. The contract amendment for AECOM that has been completed, and the one with Sam Schwartz is ongoing. Okay. Moving down to carbon reduction grants. For this one, staff brought the grant acceptance and contract approval action before council, and the council approved the resolution on August 8th. For education and encouragement, staff will be rolling out new campaign, Slow Speeds, Save Lives. This will be at the September Green Fair. There will be reflective stickers, magnets at the event. Additionally, we have bought T-shirts that will be handed out as the participants' science pledge supporting being a safe traveler. And also, we're holding the second annual World Car-Free Week Challenge and partnering with OSI and Get Downtown. And there will be offered prizes to the biggest greenhouse gas emission reducer. Then going on to the next page, this is a new item in this report that shows the current status about flashing yellow arrow, traffic signal indication, and how the operations of FYAs is being modified that will not be in operations in concurrent with pedestrian signals. So in the first group, that's where changes have already been made, where pedestrian service calls cancel the flashing yellow signal. So the left turn signal is going to stay in red during the pedestrian service, and it's going to resume flashing yellow after pedestrian service if there's still time available. And the bottom group is where there needs to be additional evaluation. Most of these locations are doable. We just need to tackle them one by one. And a few of these in the bottom group that at those locations, we do not have push buttons, meaning pedestrian service will be in each cycle. So for those limited locations, we will not be able to cancel the flashing yellow during the any part of the cycle. So, all right. So that's the end of the product updates, and we also provide update about pedestrian and bicycle crash data from last month. So in last month, we had, for pedestrian involved crashes, reported crashes, we have 3 of those. 2 of them resulted in a B level or minor injuries. And there's 1 that's a C level, that's a possible injury as the outcome. For bicyclist involved crashes, we had 7 of those. There was 1 that's level A, serious injury, 4 B level, and 1 C level, and there's 1 that's property only damage. So that wraps up the staff report on projects and crashes.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Peter.
Thanks for that report, Luke, and thanks for the update on the flashing yellow arrow. That looks like really good progress. Thank you. So about the that we've had among cyclists in recent history, we've had 2 serious bicycle crashes recently, and I wanted to talk about those a little bit. In that, so one of them that you mentioned last month was Maple near Jackson, and then the other one was at Washington Huron Parkway. The crash at Maple near Jackson, there's a sign that blocks the view of the sidewalk that this bike rider was on when this crash happened. And I've submitted a C-click fix on it, and I've sent a note to the people advertising on the sign, and the sign is still there. And did that sign contribute to the crash? I don't know, but a tragedy happened there. Something went wrong there, and like we need to have a sense of urgency about fixing it. The other crash that we had in June then was cyclists going through the intersection of Washington Huron Parkway, and the police report says that the cyclist was going through a red signal, and that the car that hit him had a green signal. And it's very easy in a situation like this to say, well, the cyclist wasn't following the rules, and no wonder he got hurt. As a frequent cyclist, I find myself going through red lights pretty frequently. And I did it this morning at the corner of Stadium and 7th because if you're a cyclist in the bike lane there, the signals won't get triggered. And then I did it a couple weeks ago at the corner of Main and Ann Arbor Saline because the beg button was broken. Like in that case, I got out of the bike lane and went to go press the beg button to try and get the signal to change in my favor, and it wouldn't work. And I opened a C-click fix on that too, and it has since been fixed. But I was crossing that against the signal, and my daughter said, "Dad, weren't you just telling us about a crash on Washington that happened when a cyclist went through a red light?" And she was right. And I didn't have a better solution than just went against the red light. So similarly, I went to Huron Parkway, and I witnessed that the signals there were malfunctioning because the left turn to go north on Huron Parkway the sensors weren't detecting a car in the left turn lane. And it wreaked havoc with people doing dangerous things like U-turn to get around this signal that wasn't advancing for a left turn. And it made the signal look really strange. Like it made the motions in this intersection strange. And so could a cyclist confronted with that have made a bad decision about when to go through a signal that he couldn't get his bike to trigger? I don't know. I mean, I think that could definitely happen. Now, whether or not that happened in this case, I don't know. But again, I went to the site of this crash, and I saw something that was wrong, and I submitted a C-click fix, and I've already gotten a response that it was fixed. But this sort of going on site is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a crash response protocol, right? And we need to go and see what's wrong there. And if for no other reason that these are dangerous places where people get hurt. And if there's anything we can do to make them safer, we need to do it. So Raymond we'd been talking with Raymond about, crash response protocol being part of these updates or, being a regular agenda item. And I just would like to reiterate that I think this is an important activity that needs to be happening, and it needs to be executed by our transportation experts that the city has. Like, it shouldn't be an advocate and just a resident like me going out and seeing, hey, the signal's malfunctioning, and it's tough to get through this intersection. So I'd like to once again ask that we restart working on a process for evaluating crashes and fixing what is wrong in the area where these crashes have happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, then moving on to liaison reports. Any commissioners who specifically serve as a liaison to another body or organization are invited now to provide a report or update. Erica.
Yeah, just real briefly, obviously the already mentioned the trunk line study and the streetlight conversion projects. So those are two things in the past month that City Council has voted on. One of the things I just wanted to mention for this body, in case you're not aware, City has launched kind of a new AI system, Ask Ann, that you can go on the city's website or homepage and ask a question about something. And I've just started testing it a little bit. I think it's kind of interesting for folks around this screen to just ask a question, maybe transportation related, and see how, see what the feedback is. I asked it about the Miller Street project, and I was impressed with this summary that I got back around timeline and different pieces. I asked it about the streetlight conversion project. Also, like the information I got back, one thing I noticed is that it didn't capture something that happened sort of during council comments that was agreed upon by the by staff at the time, that or by the administrator, that local streets will have a 48 watt 2700 Kelvin setting. And so it's just something that I mentioned here because I think it's, as staff is thinking about what goes onto web pages and updates and stuff like that. Now that things are going to be more automated, I'm sure you guys are getting tons of training and thoughts on this. There may be things that need to be updated on project pages or something like that to capture certain elements that don't end up making it into sort of resolution form. But so far on my few tests, I've been excited about what I'm seeing come back, and I'm hoping that it means that there will be less RFIs and things that are on your plate for questions to answer. I'll certainly be pushing it out, but I think the more that we look to see, sort of those basic questions that we often get, how are they getting answered? Hopefully we can make sure that's operating well for residents.
Thank you. Anyone else? Wanu?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Brett. So we actually heard that this is the Planning Commission, a pre-PUD application for 3695 State Street, which is just south of the U-Haul site. And so what's been communicated to us is that there's an affordable housing developer looking to bring 66 units of 60% AMI, which is friendly to us. We'd obviously love to see that. But the biggest challenge that we've been facing with is connectivity for that site. Trying to figure out how residents have any sense of walkability or connectivity when you're on that kind of very heavy vehicular corridor. And so one of the things that we kind of talked about was, hey, that's traditionally been a very dangerous area. We talked a lot about just kind of like noise pollution and things of that nature. But the feedback that planning gave the petitioner was that we wanted them to bring the PUD back with some intentional thought to how to try to create some viable connection. We talked about if there's an affordable housing development that goes there, we inevitably see people trying to play Frogger right next to that highway entrance. And so we had some concerns in that respect. But that corridor study for State Street, or I think it was like from 94 up to State Street, is something that I think we want to encourage you guys to think a little bit more about how we could try to push that up on whether it's the CIP, because it is obviously a dangerous corridor. It's had accidents, and we have developers. It's Lockwood Development that came and put this forward, and they'd love to bring 66 units. And our concern is just from how do the residents kind of get around unless you're just taking a right heading north onto State Street. And it's a very difficult way. And I see people trying to take a left if they're coming south. And then it's just also bike connectivity is very difficult in that corridor. So trying to rethink how we could use the median space, et cetera. and trying to revive some of the momentum behind the State Street corridor is kind of becoming a little more pressing from that standpoint, because it is an exciting project. We just don't want it to be like an affordable housing that's on an island that increases the likelihood of potential crashes, people wanting to ride bikes. We did recommend a bus shelter there. We were like, well, there's a bus stop there. We'd love it if you work with AAATA on doing a bus shelter. But from the land use element, we like the infill development, but we have some real concerns about the legibility of transportation connectivity. So I wanted to just kind of bring that up and let you guys know, hey, that was discussed last night at planning. The other thing would be just on the comprehensive plan is moving forward. I saw the briefing that Interface Studios gave to council very recently, and that I think that we are going to be having the subcommittee meeting coming up as well. So just wanted to put that on your forefront. We're still moving forward, I think, looking to pretty much have a lot of the information collected by year's end, and then really moving forward with forming that comprehensive plan. So I think that's about it. The only other thing that I think we're going to look at as directed by council coming forth is revisiting the flexibility of home occupancy. And the only thing that I wanted to kind of throw out there is that we are kind of trying to think about trip generation with the use of obviously industries have changed with COVID, but one of the things that we want to be mindful of is not having repeated 30, 40 trips to a house, because we've expanded the definition of home occupants, or occupation. So we're going to be kind of thinking about what's the best way to ensure that we continue to have safe streets in neighborhoods, things of that nature, while maintaining and improving flexibility for people looking to have productivity in their homes. So, but I think that's coming forth in a few months with respect to OR. It'll probably go to ORC first, and then so I think those are just kind of the quick hitters on the forefront. But that State Street corridor and the Lockwood thing we were all scratching our heads. How do people get around here? So just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention. Thank you.
Thanks, Fanu. Yeah, I'll note that I recall during the CIP presentation last month or the month before that the State Street revitalization project is binned in the beyond 2029 bin. It keeps getting pushed out, and as someone who grew up, going to the mall and trying to navigate State Street for the vast majority of my life, I totally agree that it's decades beyond due for a rethink. But anyway.
Yep, and I think it'll require, as private landowners want to, have infill development, we have to focus on the right of way, because the developer can only effectuate, so much of it from that standpoint. And the other thing that I will say is that I think the BIZ is moving forward, which is the business improvement zone for that area. But the limitation of that is that the special kind of district secondary tax that they're going to move forward is really only going to be for beautification, wayfinding, and things that improve kind of legibility in the built environment, but it's not going to be this big transformative kind of reworking of lanes and things like that, because that can only really be done from the municipal and state level. So I think we need to continue to push for additional safety on that corridor. I mean, we've had the study, we've seen the risk reduction kind of proposals, but nothing's really come of it. And then we do have a land use proposal coming forth from Lockwood. So we're like, okay, they can only do so much. So, but yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Peter?
I'm glad you brought up the businesses in residential areas. One, I'm very interested in that, because I see it as a way to take car trips to destinations and turn them instead into bike rides or walking trips or shorter car trips to destinations within your own neighborhood. So I'd like to do that in a way that we can encourage that kind of those kinds of businesses within neighborhoods, so that we can have shorter trips. So
thank you. Any other liaison reports? Yep. Mike?
Thanks. Thanks, Brett. I just wanted, I don't have any real details, but just putting it out there that the PD is going to be rolling out a traffic safety plan in the next, I'm going to say, month or so. We're working with engineering very closely, identifying those corridors that we have our most serious accidents, and the PD is going to have a dedicated plan for that. And then just to comment on something Pete asked about earlier, we're increasing our collaboration with engineering, and we're going to have an annual meeting. I'm sorry, a monthly meeting to discuss the previous month's serious crashes, which will include reviewing all the data, crash data, UD10s, potentially going out to the site, check things out. I think hopefully that's what you're asking for to do. I spoke with Cynthia and Suzanne this morning, and I think they're and Luke the other day, and I think we're all on board that this is the next step to helping to mitigate future accidents when we do have them. So a few things in the works. Next month I should have more details on the plan for sure, and we should have already had our first crash meeting as well. We can report back on that.
That's very exciting. All those things are great to hear. Thank you so much, Mike. And yeah, we can maybe there's if it's worth adding to the monthly staff report, we can do that as well. So that's great. Thank you very much for that information.
Yes, thank you.
Any other liaison reports? All right, moving on to commission member communications. Any commissioners are invited to provide any other reports, updates, thoughts? All right, seeing none, this is a call for agenda items, or monthly call for agenda items. Luke, do you want to review the existing work plan and previously requested topics?
Yes. So far on the list, we have annual crash report and presentation. That's going to be a joint presentation between PD and engineering. And also over the next month or 2 months, we're looking to provide an update for the Safe Street for All project, the overall category of projects in there. Downtown area circulation study is also something we have on the radar. We don't really have any detailed schedule for which one goes into what month. The only thing we're sure is that the annual crash report will be in September meeting.
Thank you. And while I'm thinking about it, maybe we could have an update on, it might be from the DDA or maybe from city staff, about the curbside management changes that were proposed to street parking, within the DDA. Rethinking how we allocate curb space. I know that study was completed a while ago, and some conclusions were drawn. So maybe we could have a topic about where those stand.
Will do.
All right, the next meeting will be, and of course, anyone, if you have any ideas or topics, please email them to any of us at any time. The next meeting will be held on Wednesday, September 18th, 2024 at 7 p.m. It will also be a virtual meeting. If there are no objections, we'll adjourn this August 21st, 2024 meeting. Seeing no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Right.